Marie here, and today we're going to be making some vintage style button cards. So I have always loved and wanted the stamp set, and I recently opened a secondhand craft supplies Etsy store called Crafts Collaborative, and I'm finding so many adorable vintage buttons, and I'm wanting to resell those to anybody that wants them, collectors, crafters, people that want them for embellishments, or maybe you want like a little photo prop or a small decor piece. So I wanted to present them in a way, package them in a way that was also adorable, like as adorable as the buttons, you know? So I use that as an excuse to purchase this stamp set that I've been jonesing for forever. So this is by Paper Tray Ink. It's been out for quite a while, so you might even be able to find it secondhand if you're interested in it. Um, and I did technically get this when I was still frozen, but you know, it was for my store. So, although, quick update on that, I have completed my 50 projects and I am enjoying the heck out of being unfrozen, especially because this weekend, when you get this, it'll be, you know, Monday, but this weekend when I'm recording the voiceover, I'm actually at We Create in Springfield, um, kind of holed up in my hotel room because, you know, COVID, but I'm enjoying the time to just focus on myself and scrapbooking and hang out with some of my friends a little bit and shop. I'm shopping. Definitely shopping. So I'll be freezing again soon, just so you know. Anyway, we're going to start. I wanted to go in just kind of a rainbow. I decided I have so many buttons that I decided I wasn't going to focus on making each card absolutely unique and centered on each set of buttons, because that would just be way too in the weeds. And I would get way hung up on it with my perfectionist tendencies. So I decided I'm going to make a red card, an orange type card, a yellow type card, that kind of thing. And I just decided to start with one 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. I used the new Basil Speckles cardstock, which is recycled, which I love. Wish they made it in all the colors, but as of right now, it's just neutrals. And I'm starting with my reds. So I just stamped a little frame and a little header, and now I'm kind of making my plan of attack for the next one. Okay, so I got that piece of cardstock and I cut it up into, I think it was 3x4 inch cards. So I got about a dozen cards out of one piece of cardstock, and that's just where I'm going to start for this round. I have to kind of artificially limit myself. I know that I can't possibly make enough and prep enough buttons to get things listed in a reasonable manner. So I decided to just cut up one piece of cardstock and make what I could from it, and just keep moving forward. So here are my oranges, which is really more of a coral. And I make the one pass for that. I use 2 stamps on each button card though. Just kind of trying to decide where I'm going to place this. On the red one, I use the same tone of ink for both, but on this one, since it is going to overlap, I felt like it needed a contrasting color. So I'm going to go with a chocolate brown on this one. And now it's time for the yellow. So I'm playing with the whole stamp set. I'm just choosing different pieces. This is a background that is kind of a more solid color, or like a filled in stamp, more solid stamp. So I did prep these a little with a damp cloth, but I did have to restamp a couple because they were a little splotchy since it's a new set. And then I'm also using the Hero Arts mid-tone inks, or the shadow inks, which tend to diffuse after you stamp them. So they always look a little splotchy on the solid colors, but then they even out a little as they dry. So they definitely look a little splotchy here, but it does even out as we go. And then this is just a little, they have little 25-cent stamps that go on them that I did in a contrasting color. Actually, I don't know if that was a 25-cent stamp or a little teeny tiny button stamp. I think it was a teeny tiny button stamp. But they had a bunch of like different prices and stuff. Definitely vintage prices for button cards. All right, so now we're moving on to the green. And this was the color I chose. I think I maybe wish I would have gone with more of an olive. But you know what? I didn't end up with a lot of green buttons. So it worked out fine. I just ended up using it with stuff that coordinated or complemented it. So this one I'm using a little stitch stamp for the bottom and then the top, and I'm just lining them up and using the green with both. And then I'm going in with another little, the same stamp, but in a chocolate brown, and I'm just using my block. I'm putting it there because I've got a little piece of foam, and I like to stamp on foam when I can, but I'm not going to actually put on the press for those. I'll just use my block really quick. And then this is a gap I have in my inks. I haven't found these mid-tone inks in purple or in very many, like I have a bluey purple color, but I don't have any really pure purples. So I'm going with this blue purple as my blue and my purple. And then I'll do some neutral complementary stamping on it. All right, so I just looked up to double check my measurements and I'm all over the place. I only used one piece of cardstock. I decided to call it quits after 15 cards. I decided like about a dozen cards would be enough for my first listing, and I prepped 15. They are about 2 by 3 inches each, so you can get more than that from one piece of cardstock, but so that's what some of those scraps are too. So the next step is aging the cards a little bit because I want them to look vintage. This I regret. Like I wanted to do this. I should have done this. I'm fine with having done this, but I wish I would have went back and like stopped myself and used like my soft vanilla or more of a cream colored ink, a really pale brown. This was too dark, and I tried to kind of rub some off on that scrap first and to make sure to start on my mat and then come on to my card, but it still just ended up a little too dark on some of the cards. Some of the others, you know, when I did it like the second time, if it was the second card I did with the same brush, that was fine. Or, you know, by the time I got around to the fourth side of the card, that level of inking was fine. But it was a little harsh on some of them. So lesson learned for next time. Because I'll definitely be making these again. It was very fun. There's still some combinations, you know, that I'd like to try on the Button Boutique stamp set and everything. So I'm definitely going to make, and I've got so many more buttons, you guys. So I'm definitely going to be making them again. But I'm also definitely going to be using a lighter shade of brown to do this part of the inking. All right, so after I inked all of my cards, I wanted to start distressing the edges before I added the buttons to them. So I just did this as I went. So I would distress the edges and then I would start to prep those buttons. So I use my edge distresser, then I put them on my piercing mat. And I am selling these in groups of 4 or 6, depending on the type of button they are, how large they are, that type of thing. Some of them are just really, really special buttons, and so I'm selling those in sets of 4. And others are smaller or mostly, you know, more plastic pieces, that kind of thing. And I'm selling those in sets of 6. So depending on kind of what my groups ended up being, that's how I punch the holes. And I started by punching a single hole per button, but I found pretty quickly that I wasn't able to stitch them on easily that way. I had trouble figuring out a good way to do it. Also, I was uber precise on my first ones. I kind of gave that up eventually and just eyeballed it because I can eyeball it just fine. There was really no reason to be uber precise, but I measured that first one and then I kind of used it as a template for a while. But later on, I was just winging it and it worked fine, if not better, because I should have been punching these as I went, and I did for eventually. Because again, the buttons are different sizes since they're vintage and they're not really a complete set. So they varied in size, and sometimes I would need to change the placement of the button. So I figured that out eventually. So this was the most really tedious part for me, was stitching the buttons on. I had so much fun creating the button cards and choosing the buttons to go in each one or on each one. But then I had to, hand stitch them all on. I'm sure that there's a more efficient method to this, but I couldn't figure it out. I had to just do each one by hand by itself as I went, because I tried a few different variations, and for me this ended up being the quickest. But if you got any ideas, please share them, because like I said, I'll be making more of these. And I love how they turned out. They were so fun to make, but the sewing did take days, so I'm open to suggestions. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and you can check out my Etsy. I'll put the links in the description box below. And yeah, have a great week. Bye.